It's Watch Wrestling with Mike Wellman, yo. Hit the mat hard, let the punches throw. Slams in the drama, your new favorite show. We drop the hot takes, keep the crowd in the flow. Clotheslines, power bombs, suplex the beat. Tune in weekly, we'll take the hot seat. From the ring to the street, the vibe stays elite. Watch Wrestling with Mike, nobody can compete. The face and the heel, we break down the deal. Wrestling fan Kris, the man and the myth. Voice of the people, that's a hypodermic needle. Clotheslines, power bombs, suplex the beat. Tune the beat, tune in weekly. We'll take the hot seat. From the ring to the street, the vibe stays elite. Watch Wrestling with Mike, nobody can compete. Mike's the name, wrestling's the game. Hit play every week, the vibe ain't the same.
What's up, gang? Welcome to another episode of Watch Wrestling with Mike Wellman, the podcast that breaks down the biggest stories in and out of the ring. My name is Mike Wellman. I am your host. Thank you for hitting that play button. We appreciate you here as always. And on this episode, folks, you have just joined the Wolfpac. Ow! Burn, burn, now, 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 burn, burn, now, 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 burn, now, 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 ow! Burn, now, 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 now. Wrestling fan Kris, are you there?
I am.
Folks, Wrestling fan Kris is back, causing mass destruction. Don't turn your back on Wrestling fan Kris because you might wind up in a body bag.
That's correct. Thank you.
That's how the song goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
By C Murder.
It's a good song.
The Wolfpac theme song. Folks, on this episode, we will be diving somewhat deep into the NWO Wolfpac. That's right, folks. This is the Wolfpac episode of Watch Wrestling with Mike Wellman. We are here to talk about the NWO Wolfpac. And if you don't know what the Wolfpac was, folks, it was a splinter group out of the NWO in 1998 where Kevin Nash and a few others formed a babyface group within the NWO to take on Hollywood Hogan and the NWO as a whole. Really, the group started because Thunder had just popped up on the scene as a television show thanks to Ted Turner, and the initial idea was for the NWO to have sort of the whole show be sort of this brand of the NWO facing off with each other. But yeah, a lot of fun times looking back at some of this Wolfpac stuff. It didn't last as long as I remember in my mind as a kid, and there was also a lot of shenanigans here at play. And I thought that the Wolfpac itself was sort of right at this intersection of everything going wrong in WCW. So I thought it was good to take some time to discuss the Wolfpac group, the fact that we thought they were cool at the time.
Yeah.
Whether or not that coolness still holds up here 27 years later after the pack disassociated, or did I just disassociate? I don't know. Disbanded. And yeah, there's movement in my house, but I'm supposed to be alone. And yeah, we're here to talk about the Wolfpac, Jack. So, Kris, do you have a favorite? Well, what was your thoughts on the Wolfpac? Were you down with the Wolfpac, or were you down with the Hollywood NWO?
No, I was down with the Wolfpac. So were all my friends, and we love the Wolfpac so much. And man, nothing cooler.
Yeah, it was definitely a moment in time for sure. It was came about right where the NWO WCW had already kind of gotten like really popular, right? Just even culturally, more so than people even can really remember.
Yep.
Especially amongst wrestling fans, and then the NWO obviously was popular as well, and then there was just all of the sudden almost, there was a new group within the NWO, the Red and Black Wolfpac. So let's let's go back to the beginning here, right? I think our story should start here at Starrcade 97. And I think that that is where Sting defeats Hollywood Hogan for the WCW championship, right? And that is where it was supposed to be this big climax. It was a little bit anticlimactic for a few reasons. Sting was not tan.
That's right.
Nick Patrick. What was the scenario at Starrcade? Nick Patrick was supposed to do a fast count, but he did a normal count.
Yes.
And then Bret Hart had to come out and do the count, something like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Like Bret Hart was supposed to come out because Nick Patrick was supposed to do the quick count. Bret Hart was supposed to come out and be like, this is not happening again.
Yeah.
And like be the one to change it. But instead, Nick Patrick just gave the regular count. So it made no sense. We don't know. Speculation. Allegedly, maybe Hulk Hogan told Nick Patrick, brother, make a regular count. I don't know.
Right, so Hulk Hogan may have influenced things to make the show not as good, and that's going to be a theme throughout our story here about the Wolfpac. But nonetheless, that is when Sting famously, defeats Hollywood Hogan, wins the world championship. And so this would kind of kick off some dissension in the NWO, because at this point the NWO was very bloated. There was a lot of guys in the NWO, right? And not all of those guys were willing to sort of step aside and let Hogan capture all the spotlight. So in the NWO, you had guys like the Macho Man and Kevin Nash. And what we saw was the first dissension ended up being naturally between Hogan and the Macho Man, right? So Hogan sought to remind the Macho Man who he works for and that, the NWO is for life, brother. And then Macho Man kind of was against Hogan, kind of defiant, not really down with Hogan being in charge of everything. So that's the first level of tension that we get in the NWO is Savage and Hogan. And then Hogan ends up trying, we get a match at, was it Spring Stampede, right? Sting defending the NWO championship against Macho Man. And I wonder, why is it that we don't really often talk about Macho Man's reign here with the WCW World Championship? Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe it's because it lasted one day. Because Hogan comes out at Spring Stampede and tries to cost the Macho Man the world title. He knocks the Macho Man off the top rope, even goes like this to say, like, we're done, the work is done. And then Kevin Nash actually comes out and helps the Macho Man win the world championship from Sting. So then, the next night on Nitro, Hogan immediately takes the championship back from Macho Man.
Of course, yeah.
So this causes basically Kevin Nash and the Macho Man to sort of splinter from the NWO. They've had it. There was some back and forth. Kevin Nash, Hollywood Hogan. Kevin Nash even sought to placate Hollywood Hogan's fears. He said, Hollywood Hogan, I'm wearing your t-shirt right now, so you know I got your back. But then he inexplicably said, but you better be careful, because if I wear your t-shirt for too long, you get fired. I'm pretty sure that was Kevin Nash speaking to us specifically 27 years in the future, because the crowd didn't know what the hell he was talking about.
Yeah.
And I laughed for a minute straight when I rewatched this. So if he wears your shirt for too long, you get fired. To no reaction.
Yeah.
It was just great.
Classic Nash.
Actually talking about 6, Sean Waltman getting fired by Eric Bischoff around that time. So yeah, he's wearing a Hollywood Hogan shirt. He says, like, I'm on your side, Hogan, and all this. Nash was cutting a lot of promos at this time, and they were all very kind of monotone and just getting the message out there, whether or not the crowd was caring or distracted or what have you. But they eventually kind of got on Nash's side, but they weren't really all there at first.
I'm gonna tell you a secret. I didn't care what he was saying. I was on his side from day one. I loved monotone Nash. Back then, I loved smarmy, monotone Nash. He's too cool for this. So I'm the man. Nash is my guy. I love Diesel. I love Nash.
He should have had the world belt around his waist. He should have had a run with the world belt. He should have that world belt around his waist right now. So, the Wolfpack, like I said, started with Nash and Macho Man just being fed up with Hogan. And then Nash decides to introduce the first recruit to what was not even yet the Red and Black Wolfpack, just the Wolfpack. Being, of course, K-Dog. Conan has entered the chat, folks. Conan joins the Wolfpack.
Listen, another thing before you continue, I also liked Conan. When he was there hanging with Nash, I'm like, this is great. This is going to be awesome.
Conan came out here looking like Lefty Gunplay, joining the Wolfpack in 1998. And Conan let us know a few things, you know. He was definitely over. Conan, to me, was the Timu Road Dog here, the mid-carder who could cut a promo that the crowd would recite back to him. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, no, I was definitely, at the time, being a 10-year-old, I thought Conan was cool as fuck.
Hell yeah.
And so we got Nash, Savage, and Conan. We got this trio of cool dudes. The Wolfpack has formed. Nash lets us know that this is the Wolfpack. So then we're introducing more members. And actually the next member that Nash introduced was actually Curt Hennig, who, much like most people here, would just go on to inexplicably switch sides to the white and black as time goes on. But Curt Hennig, I wish Curt Angle was part of the Wolfpack.
I know.
Curt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, was down with the red and black because at this point now we do have red shirts. So then we get Scott Hall, who was on again, on TV, off TV. This was, I think, before they did the actual storyline where he was on drugs and where he was just shoot on drugs. Right?
I think so too, yes. Yep.
So the Outsiders were both part of the NWO, obviously. Spring Stampede? Hall turns on Nash to help. Who was it? Was it Sting and the Giant win the tag team titles?
I think it was. I was just looking at it. Let's make sure.
Scott Hall turns on Kevin Nash. They had Dusty Rhodes out there with them as well. And so Scott Hall is not down with the Wolfpack. He is, and this is the end of the Outsiders, essentially, as their first run in WCW, is when Hall turns on Kevin Nash, stays with the white and black, kind of stumbling around, and then he's just off TV, right?
Yeah.
So that's it for the Outsiders. But then we get more recruits to the Wolfpack because now, all of a sudden, one night, out comes Lex Luger, who was not part of the NWO, white and black, at the time. Luger comes out, and he did this one move with a steel chair where he just made the Giant disappear from the ring with a chair. And this is some of Luger's best work, in my opinion, because he's underrated as one of the biggest, strongest guys in the history of wrestling. You know, I mean, he's the total package Lex Luger, so he's kind of known for that, but also his actual physical abilities, especially in terms of like a 20-something-year-old gigantic Paul White being able to maneuver him around the ring the way he did. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So he just sends the Giant out of the ring with this steel chair. It was amazing. And yeah, now Luger is down with the Wolfpack. But here's what I didn't really understand, and I think I am thinking a little bit too far into it, is they offered Luger the red and black shirt, and he took it. So am I supposed to believe that he decided to do that in that moment, and none of these characters had previous conversations to say, hey, like they introduced Conan, you know, to you as a member. They introduced Curt Hennig. They didn't introduce Lex Luger. They kind of said, do you want to join? Yay. So now Luger is down with the Wolfpac. They're coming out on Thunder. Now they got the red and black NWO shirts, and they've got their own theme song by C Murder. And it was their own, now they're their own group, right? So then, and now the white and black NWO, who was even in the NWO at this time, right? So you got Hogan, you've got this mystery man who will later learn is the disciple. You've got Stevie Ray somehow winds up in the NWO. Scott Norton,
of course.
Buff Bagwell, Vincent, Scott Steiner.
Mm-hmm.
Is Ted DiBiase still floating around there?
I don't think so. I think he's gone by now.
Yeah, so there's a lot of filler guys in the NWO that are just out there to take bumps, and every scene now becomes so Hogan was, I don't know what he left to do something. I don't know if he was sick or if he was doing a TV show or something, but he comes back and he gets all the white and black guys in the ring with Kevin Nash finally, because he had been gone this entire time that Nash had been like forming this subgroup, and he's like you're gonna announce right here that I'm your champion. And he's got absolutely no voice whatsoever, right? Hogan is just screaming, and his voice sounds like it's ripped to shreds. And he's screaming at Nash about how you're going to tell everybody that I'm your champion and that I'm the leader of the NWO, and you're going to tell everybody that you confused Kurt Hennig and you confused K-Dog. And Nash is just looking at him like, bruh. And Nash comes in, he's like, this was the time that Nash was like, let me tell you something, brother, because he was making fun of Hogan having no voice. And those are the things that like legitimately will get under somebody's skin as a performer when the guy's calling you out for the real thing, that's happening to you. And it's like Nash would do that just every single week. Say that, if I wear your shirt for too long, you'll get fired. Then he comes out and he does the brother to Hogan. Hogan's just, that was Hogan at the time, literally took his sunglasses off and just looked at him like, all right, buddy, don't make fun of me. So Nash does not do what Hogan wants and does not kind of renounce the this red and black. And there was one funny moment in the Wolfpac saga where Nash is kind of like introducing their new red and black colors, and it's so cringe. It is just the most cringe thing. He's like, yeah, so we got some new colors around here, and that's what's down with that. And I'm thinking to myself, one week, Kevin Nash comes out here wearing jeans and a black polo shirt tucked in, like he's getting ready to go to the airport. And then the next week, he comes out wearing a bandana, a red and black NWO tank top, and like a baggy plaid shirt. I'm like, what happened to you over the past week, man?
It's so it kind of makes me ashamed because I was just like, this is so cool.
And he comes out and all of a sudden he's talking about how you better be down with the red and black. And I'm just thinking, and he's like, yeah, we got some new colors, like it's a gang. And I look out in the crowd, and just this particular night on Nitro, I guarantee you on that hard camera shot, every single goddamn human was just a Caucasian man behind Kevin Nash. I don't know what city they were in. But he's talking about getting down with the Wolfpac to a crowd full of trucker hat wearing white dudes. I just thought it was interesting looking back on that.
It's very funny.
and they weren't really, I mean, definitely this thing was getting ratings for sure, but the crowd in the beginning of the Wolfpac was kind of like, I don't know what this is. Give me a Slim Jim. So then we got the big moment here for the Wolfpac, right, is we get the will he or won't he join up with the man they call Sting. So Sting was still coming down from the rafters at this point. We had the NWO Sting. He was just part of all these melees too.
Jeez.
He's running around. And then, yes, the will he or won't he, they offer him the shirt. And then one episode of Nitro, I think it was Nitro, ends. Sting's holding the red and black shirt. You don't know. End credits. You don't know. But then he ultimately does decide to join the Wolfpac. So now we've got this babyface crew of the NWO Wolfpac coming out with their own theme song and their own red and black shirt. And now Sting starts coming out, the Crow Sting character with red and black face paint, red and black scorpion. Everything is, instead of white and black, it's now red and black. And I thought it was cool. I still think in hindsight that was a okay move for Sting to make, because watch how many people around them at that time, how many top stars in WCW's careers were just languishing because of poor storytelling and Hulk Hogan. Oh, you know who else was in the NWO? Bret Hart.
The white and black, right?
Yeah.
I also loved when Sting joined. I remember one of the moments in my life where I visibly yelled. The pop got me in my living room. I was just so hyped that Sting is joining the red and black. Let's go.
Yep, so Sting starts wearing the red and black. And like I said, I thought it was a good move for Sting because you did that Crow character for a year straight. What else are you going to do? You've already won the world title. Hulk Hogan's ruining every story left and right. Luger joining the NWO was a weird stretch, I think. And Sting is kind of like, to me, it was just a little on the hot shot side of booking, but it worked, Mm-hmm. It just kind of gave Sting a little injection of coolness so that character didn't really get stale.
And I mean, Sting could use that coolness, and it was cool. And like looking back, it wasn't cool for Lex Luger. It didn't make him cool. It just looked out of place.
He was as happy as a pig in shit to be part of the Wolfpac. Are you kidding me? Lex Luger's coming out here, and everyone thinks he's actually cool.
Yeah.
You could tell he was reveling in those moments. He's just coming out like, all right, yep, doing the little Wolfpac to everybody. Like,
for the cool kid. It's great.
Like Lex Luger is finally one of the cool dudes, How's it feel, Lex? So by this point, the NWO Wolfpac is like the most popular act in WCW. Conan, like I said, in my opinion, looking back, he's the Timu Road Dogg. But at the time, he was getting the crowds amped up every week, saying Viva la Raza. So then... So the Wolfpac is kind of battling with a couple guys in WCW. You've got Roddy Piper, the Giant, who's going back and forth. He was out of the NWO, then he was back in the NWO. He was with WCW for a while. So then at one point, Sting and Kevin Nash win the tag team titles, right? And that is, I can't remember the show. Oh, the Great American Bash, I believe, is where they... win the titles, and this is where people start going down, right? So now the Macho Man quickly gone from the scene, injured. Scott Hall gone from the scene, drugs. Hogan also gone a few separate times, and we get Nash and Sting winning the WCW tag team titles. And then Hogan, this is around the time where in the summertime of 98, Hogan decides he's going to run for president of the United States. So he's coming out with all this red, white, and blue. That was, if you remember, that was when he had the goofy-ass white sunglasses, like the Jamiroquai sunglasses.
Yeah, oh, God, of course.
So wait, was it Bash at the Beach? This is what it was. Going back to when Hall turned on Nash, it was at Bash at the Beach, 98. So that was where that was. And then now Hall and Nash, they're feuding, but then like they get back together because now people are beating up Scott Hall. Scott Hall's getting attacked as well. And then Nash actually comes out to save him. So now they're in the ring together after they've been apart for months and months and months. And then this is where Hall, the alcohol gimmick starts on TV, right, with Scott Hall.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have so basically the WCW title went from Sting at Starrcade to Macho Man, and then the next night on Nitro in the spring, Hogan wins it back, and I'm pretty sure that's where Hogan would then go lose it to Goldberg, right?
Yes, I
at
think
the famous Nitro in the Georgia Dome.
Yep.
Where Goldberg finally beat Hogan, right? So then Goldberg's got the streak. So all while this is happening, Goldberg is still undefeated, and now he's the world champion, right? So this is where we get... Hang on. This is where we get to the cover of this book, Nitro, right? And let me see, this one, they actually came out with a new one. Guy Evans just wrote even more. It was like Beyond Nitro, because the stories never end about this time period. But this, folks, this scene is worthy of being on the cover of this book, because Nitro was such a wild and crazy phenomenon culturally and popularity-wise. And it came up, it happened so fast, its rise. And then this, folks, is if you just need one. This wasn't even at Nitro. This was at Starrcade 98. If you need one photo of everything wrong with WCW in one photo, it's all of the intersections of all the storylines that led to this moment right here, the end of the streak, right? Because obviously everybody points to the finger poke of doom as what killed WCW or whatever. But if you think about it, that moment, the end of the streak, had elements of all the problematic points in WCW, right? So Goldberg has the streak. Nash, as Kris has been saying here, is over like Rover as the leader of the Wolfpac, right? And Nash will tell you that too. And if you go back and watch, he was over. The crowd cheered wildly when he beat Goldberg, right? So that did happen. But Goldberg's now, the streak has gone on to, it was like 173, 176, something like that, and and he's the world champion, and he's taken on Kevin Nash at Starrcade. So Nash has spoken about this a few times. He's said that, basically they needed something to beat Goldberg, because they decided that, generally speaking, with a baby face and a good guy in wrestling, all the money is in the chase. They want to chase the championship. That's where you kind of rally behind them. We've seen it so many times, right? John Moxley, Cody in recent years. The money's in the chase, and Goldberg is now past that point, so what do you do with them? So a lot of people think that they ended the streak prematurely, that they could have still gone on with Goldberg as champion, and then a lot of people think that the way they ended it really, it killed more than Goldberg's career, put it that way, or his momentum. It killed the momentum of the entire company, right? Oh, yeah. And they didn't get it back. So they go into Starrcade. This is now in December of 98. So we're really getting to the end here. So now we've had the Outsiders disband and kind of get back together. And, it was 173-0 for Goldberg going into Starrcade 98.
Ooh.
So what ends up happening is that, like every other night of WCW television, it ends up being a wild melee with the NWO and nonstop interference. And Goldberg is taking care of all of that. And then all of a sudden, somebody comes around the corner. Goldberg's in the corner. Somebody comes around with a event staff t-shirt on and cattle prods Goldberg and tases him. And it was Scott Hall coming in with the cattle prod, tasing Goldberg. Then we get this. Nash ends Goldberg's streak, right? Mm-hmm. And, his argument was at the time, people cheered it, right? Fine. People did cheer it, right? That's fine. I have no problem admitting that the Wolfpac was over, that Kevin Nash was over. But that doesn't mean that you didn't cut people off at the knees all along the way, and the crowd was just still there for it, for most of it at this point, because they wouldn't be for much longer after this. So now you have Hall coming back into the mix. Goldberg was definitely a babyface as a world champion. He helps Nash win, and even though the crowd cheered, now the Wolfpac is not baby faces anymore, right? So now we go into 1999, and on the very first episode of Nitro of the year 1999, there was supposed to be a rematch, right? It was in Atlanta, again at the Georgia Dome. Supposed to be Kevin Nash defending against Goldberg, right? This is a big match. Oh, and all the while, this entire time, they've essentially been building this feud. This is how the Wolfpac started. A feud between the two biggest egos in the Wolfpac, Hollywood Hogan and Kevin Nash, right? And going back and watching all of this footage of the Wolfpac, they did an okay job, especially in the first half of 1998, building a match between Hogan and Nash, right?
Yeah.
So that was a money match that they had, that they could have made. And they seemingly, you don't really build this much towards something and then not do it. Obviously, WCW did, but you don't really build this much and then you get nothing, right? So I'm looking back on this and I'm like, yes, can you imagine? That would have been a decent match, Hogan and Nash. But Hogan couldn't get his head out of his ass. Nash was, I don't even know what you say about Kevin Nash. He was booking, but Hogan had creative control. So they did not ever really book, these things to satisfactory conclusions.
Yeah.
Right? And that happened so often throughout the NWO storyline and throughout the last kind of part of WCW there. I mean, like I said, even the Sting Starrcade match ended with Nick Patrick being a dipshit,
Yes.
and ruining it. And then we don't even have to talk about the Ultimate Warrior or the Warriors' time in WCW with the fireworks spot.
We can't. No.
And then you have, how about Bret Hart's entire run in WCW? Bret Hart being in the NWO was just the fingerprint that you need to know that Hulk Hogan was holding back everybody in WCW. Because Bret Hart was a legitimate star and could have superseded Hogan at the top of WCW, right? Could have supplanted him.
Yes.
Hogan didn't let that happen because he made sure that Bret Hart was always in the background to him, right? That's just one of the things that happened there with Hogan. And so now Nash is the world champion. He's beaten Goldberg. In hindsight, that thing aged like milk.
Yes.
The ending of the streak. You build up the streak for years and years, and just to have it end like that. And they'll all talk like they were booked into a corner or they booked themselves into a corner, but it is what it is. So then in the first Nitro of 1999, we're supposed to get Nash versus Goldberg. So you've got all these people in the arena waiting to see a pretty big marquee matchup between Nash and Goldberg. Well, on the beginning of the episode of Nitro, the police arrest Goldberg, sadly, because Goldberg has been accused of S.A.ing Miss Elizabeth. That's how it happened, right?
As you do. Classic wrestling.
Just, So Goldberg's like telling the cops, it's going to take every single gun and every single taser you got on your belt to hold me down. And then he just lets them arrest him without any firearms being fired. So he's gone. They're like, Bill, don't do it, Bill. He's like, where are you taking me? He's like, we're going downtown. So that was a interesting segment there. So now that match is not happening here at the Georgia Dome in front of all these people. So then at the time, I believe he was WCW president, Ric Flair, came out and made the match that now we're going to have Hollywood Hogan versus Big Sexy tonight. So now this is this would happen sometimes a lot during the Attitude Era in WWF and Nitro, where all of a sudden they're doing a short notice announcement of an awesome match for tonight because we want to get ratings, right? So now this brings us to the most infamous moment. Well, maybe the second most infamous moment to the Shockmaster, but the most consequential moment, in my opinion, in WCW history, which is the infamous finger poke of doom, right? So what we have here is Nash and Hogan come out for their main event match on Nitro for the WCW Championship, and we're finally getting it, right? We're finally getting this match that has been built up for almost a year, right? Hogan and Nash. The match, the only match that Hulk Hogan was not allowed to prematurely never get off the ground, right? There was no Hulk Hogan versus Bret Hart feud in WCW. There was no Bret Hart versus Kevin Nash big match in WCW, right? Bret Hart did not get utilized properly in WCW. Goldberg barely did. Nash did not. Hall was drunken on drugs, happy fun time hour the whole time. So very few big matchups even got this far. And obviously it's because it's involving Hogan, so he didn't stifle his own storylines. But here we got to at the finger poke of doom, where they get in the ring and Hogan pokes Nash on the chest. He hits the ground and Hogan pins him, winning the WCW World Championship, forever screwing over the fans of WCW. Mm-hmm. And yes, that was the finger poke of doom. So now you had these two sides. This podcast is about the NWO Wolfpac, right? Where was the Wolfpac? Well, it turns out that actually the NWO joined up. They all joined together. They would go on to be the NWO Elite, which was like Hogan and Nash. But nope, that was that. The finger poke of doom, January 1999. The two NWO factions merged together, effectively dissolving the Wolfpac. Now, Hogan would go on to wear some red and black in forgettable times, you know.
That's right.
This was definitely the... If this wasn't the turning point in WCW's irreversible decline, it was definitely the moment of no return, for sure, the finger poke of doom. So I wanted to kind of sandwich these two moments, right, where we go from Starrcade 1997, where a year-long story, albeit filled with botches, a year-long story gets paid off by the good guy Sting finally beating the bad guy Hollywood Hulk Hogan. The biggest, story in WCW, really, up until that point. Fast forward to just over a year later, and you have the politics of Hulk Hogan, mostly Hulk Hogan, and Kevin Nash just ruining not just the show, ruining the whole story, ruining the momentum of the company. Just Titanic level failures here. Creatively, with the finger poke of doom, the end of the streak, and the whole thing just went down in flames. Did it not, Kris?
Crazy. And I'm thinking about the finger poke of doom now. I remember it. I know it was crazy, and it was a turning point. But I'm thinking about it, and I was so far. I love WWE way more than WCW for my whole life, but I was into the NWO first and Goldberg and stuff. But I was watching Raw more often. I liked Raw more. I was WWF all the way. But I remember this happening, and I remember just being like, oh, yeah, that's WCW. And I just don't think I ever watched Nitro again. Like, I wasn't like, it didn't make me like super mad. I wasn't like, I can't believe they've done this to wrestling. This is I wasn't that mad about it. I was just like, yeah, that's it. And like, I didn't consciously say I'm never watching WCW again, but I never did. And that's a big problem.
I watched WCW all the way to the end, but one of the criticisms I remember having as a kid and everybody else around me having was just that, like, wrestling there's interference because it's a fake show, right? Like if every football game ended in a fucked up way with no winner, you'd stop watching football. But with wrestling, it's somehow okay that there's these gangs and groups and factions and interference and warring sides and brawls and all kinds of stuff like that. But in WCW, they just took it to an entirely new level of ending every show with the NWO coming out and destroying everyone. There's one scene where, I don't remember which show it was, but the NWO was in the ring. And of course, the places WCW would go in the late 90s, the fans would chuck shit into the ring, right? So somebody had like the largest goddamn soda I've ever seen in my life, hurling it into the ring, right? And it just bounces off of Hogan's shoulder and just the soda. And then Heenan on commentary, he's like, this is bad. Because it's like, once one drink hits the ring, it's kind of an invitation for more. But they would get drinks thrown at them. And, at the time, it's like, well, this is good heat. That means the crowd really hates us. But they went from that from getting the crowd to hate them but want to still watch the show to a lot of those folks just, like you said, turned on Raw in 1998 and just never went back. Because 1998, I mean, at the time that the Wolfpac was forming in WWF, you've got the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin, you've got D-Generation X, you've got Mike Tyson showing up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Along with people like The Rock, the Nation of Domination, Brett was already gone, but Owen Hart was still there. You had all sorts of stuff going on in WWF that, people were jumping ship. I mean, let's not forget about people like Benoit, Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, all these guys, Jericho, that while this NWO nonsense was going on, would jump ship. The Big Show ends up in WWF. All these guys jumped ship, and this was all while the Wolfpac NWO storyline was taking place, know? So while it was cool, the cool thing on WCW at the time, it didn't go anywhere. The Wolfpac, it just ended. Like a lot of these factions have just abrupt endings. Like think about the Hart Foundation in 1997. They were really cool. Just ended one night because of the Montreal Screwjob. Bret Hart's gone. Bulldog and Neidhart are gone. That's it. It's just done. You kind of got to just go move on. That's it. The story's over. There's nobody here to do it. WCW did that, except they took the whole company with them.
Yeah. It's funny too, because I think I had friends who liked WCW more. And like once the finger poke of doom happened, they stopped talking to me about WCW. It's like they stopped caring. So I really didn't care about it. And I think that is like what you're saying, man. It just really, they took the whole company down with that. Because all my WCW friends stopped talking about wrestling, and I just left WCW to die.
Well, that's the other side of these like endless beatdowns, is that people get sick of them, and then when you truly never pay off a story or just give people anything good, like the finger poke of doom was the antithesis of trying to entertain your fan base,
Yes. Oh. Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just, imagine you go to see a famous band and they set everything up. Like, let's say you go see, like, I don't know if you like Metallica, and they say, like, all right, guys, I hope you like Enter Sandman. We're going to play Enter Sandman as our final song. And then they screw you over and just don't play Enter Sandman. And they got you all hyped up for the song, and then they leave. You'd be like, you just screwed me over, Metallica.
Yep.
or
done. Mm-hmm.
Or anything like that where there's just no finale, there's no payoff, there's no conclusion, there's no satisfying end, and it makes you feel like you just wasted all of your time because you know for a fact that these people wasted your time, So you start to feel like I wasted my own time by letting them trick me into following along with this.
Yes, exactly.
I let Hulk Hogan trick me again.
Brother.
Well, we forgot to name Horace Hogan as a member of the NWO.
How could we forget?
He was
How
there
could
too.
we forget? Unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. Shame on us for sure. Oh, and so let's now rank members of the Wolfpac, right? So who do you think overall best member of the Wolfpac to you?
Oh, man. It's got. I mean, oof. I wouldn't say Nash, but I can't because of the way it ended. So I'm gonna say the best member was Conan.
Yeah, Conan was definitely emblematic of what the Wolfpack was all about for sure.
Yep.
I'll say Sting just because
Sting's good.
you know, the Red and Black Sting was just cool. He was like one of the few things that they didn't completely screw up.
Yeah, I liked Savage. I just wanted Savage away from Hogan, so I'm glad that Savage was kind of like in opposition to him. So I know he didn't really do much. He got hurt, but I like Savage a lot too.
Yeah. Red and Black, Randy Savage. Interesting how you had Savage and Luger in the Wolfpack, but at the time, Miss Elizabeth was aligned with Luger, so technically Miss Elizabeth was part of the Wolfpack too.
That's true. And I also know all these things because in WCW NWO Revenge for an N64, the Wolfpack was a separate section. So I had all the guys in there when you would toggle through to pick your character. So that was a big thing for me too. That was Kurt Hennig was actually in the Wolfpack in that game, so I knew that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get to the point where there was an NWO Wolfpack Japan.
That was the next step. Yeah, you're right.
We didn't quite get that far. We didn't globalize the Wolfpack. And if we have to say the bottom most lowest ranked member, if you even count them as a member of the Wolfpack, would obviously be the Disco Inferno.
Oh yeah, I don't even remember he was there. Oh no.
Who just came out to take ridiculous bumps.
Mm-hmm.
So folks, lay your blame at the feet of Guy Evans, who wrote this book. No, who lay your blame at the feet of whoever you want, really, in Who Killed WCW. But as far as the Wolfpack storyline, it definitively ended with the finger poke of doom. So you can now credit the finger poke of doom for not just killing WCW, but for also killing the Wolfpack. One of the most iconic wrestling factions in history, to the point where we still talk about it to this day. The Wolfpack theme song still pops up in on memes on TikTok for me.
It's a great song. I mean, it definitely is.
Yeah. So we wanted to make sure that we could devote some time to something in wrestling, much like so many other things, that was briefly cool for a period of time in the 1990s. Which is everything we base our lives around, more or less.
Correct.
Things that were briefly cool in the 1990s. But yes, that about does it for this episode, folks. Hopefully we will do some more deep dives into some of the WCW lore. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode looking at the Wolfpack. Let us know in the comments, what was your favorite Wolfpack moment, Wolfpack member in general? Did you think the Wolfpack was cool, or did you think it was lame? Looking back, folks, ultimately, it was pretty cool. But like everything in wrestling, it just comes to an abrupt, unsatisfactory conclusion, just like this podcast.